Chapter 375. The Demon King of Fury, 9. Eugene's 7 stars were swirling. In the midst of their increasingly violent rotation, the stars appeared to be collapsing into each other as the distinction between each star grew blurred. However, this phenomenon wasn't causing any pain to Eugene. His mana was still flowing according to his will, so the torrent of mana that was being generated by his stars didn't deviate from Eugene's control in the slightest. Even though Eugene was almost bursting from containing such force, his body didn't seem to have any issues handling it. Agarotha's ring, worn on the ring finger of Eugene's left hand, radiated a dark red light. But the ring's power had yet to have been activated. This light was the glow of divine power. For some reason, the trace of divine power remaining in Agarotha's ring was responding to Eugene's will. Cracker crack. A shattering sound was heard from somewhere deep within the Demon King's body, but it wasn't Iris' physical body that was shattering. The sound was generated because too much of the enormous mass of dark power that made up the very existence of a Demon King had been consumed. It was also partly due to the fact that the attack she had just been struck with was an extremely heavy blow. Bang! In contrast to the huge explosion of noise, the Demon King didn't fly all that far. She only stumbled backward a few steps at the very most, and the injury didn't look very large. Following the trajectory of the Holy Sword's swing, there was now a solid diagonal line that started at Iris' right shoulder and ended at her left waist. That was the only visible wound left on the Demon King's body. Cough. But the Demon King's face twisted as she choked. Black blood poured out from her unconsciously parted lips. She had already taken a few steps back to mitigate the force, but that hadn't been enough. The Demon King staggered one more step backward as she placed one hand on the thick line that had been carved across her body. Whoosh. At that moment, blood spurted from the wound. That slash had truly been a heavy blow, and a serious one at that. It had also struck deep. Eugene Lionheart's slash had gone beyond slicing apart the Demon King's body and had managed to reach the very core of her being. He had managed to land such a heavy blow with just one strike, but Eugene was already swinging his sword once more. And after that, there would come a few more times, as there was no way his attack would just end there. Eugene had activated ignition. Now that he was using ignition, he definitely had to kill the Demon King. Because once his core's overclocking ended, he wouldn't be left in any state to fight. Cough. The Demon King spat out even more blood as the arm that she had desperately lifted to defend herself was sliced off by Eugene's blade. The black flames that spread from that slash swept over the wound and began to gnaw at Iris' very existence. Letting out a scream, the Demon King stumbled backward. Eugene seemed different. That was the thought that was on everyone's mind. While trying to suppress a headache that felt like her skull was splitting open, Anise shook off a lingering thought. Meanwhile, Christina licked her bloody lips and recited a prayer on trembling legs. Fush. Eugene's body was strengthened by a miracle and a blessing, and the saint's light was projected into the already shining holy sword. He's used ignition, Sienna thought as she clutched at her chest and gasped for breath. Sienna suddenly heard a voice inside her head. Lady Sienna. It was Maze, who was on the ship behind them. Faithfully heeding Sienna's warning, he had been keeping his distance. Reactivating her now rickety eternal hole, Sienna barked out, "Give it to me." Maze passed on this order. Grr. Mana from Maze and the other wizards began pouring into Sienna. This mana crackled like lightning over her waving staff as pure white mist began gathering at a single point. Sienna bit her lip. Now that he's used ignition, there's no going back. Cracker cracker. Dozens of lights shot toward Eugene and began to follow his movements. Unlike the light of the Moonlight Sword, the light currently covering Eugene didn't reject Sienna's magic. Instead, the wings of prominence on his back burned even more fiercely the moment the magic attached itself to him. Sienna had linked her magic to Eugene's movements. As if having memorized his every motion, the magic flowed along with the timing of Eugene's attacks, dissipating the Demon King's dark power and injuring the Demon King's body. Nearby was Ortis Hyman. He had never once thought of himself as particularly just or moral, or a person of such integrity that no dirt could be found on him, no matter how one might look. Instead, in his own opinion, he believed himself to be a very ordinary person. Of course, this wasn't referring to his talent in the martial arts. It was referring to Ortis Hyman's innate nature as a man. If he saw others finding a way to make a profit, he too would want a share of that profit. He didn't mind taking advantage of his special privileges to do so. Even if it required playing some tricks that couldn't be said to truly be honest, he would still be willing to partake in such foul play as long as it wasn't too severe. However, he never wanted to be the first person to try and do such a thing. Having always taken care to be extra cautious, he had never been tempted to be the second, third, or even the fourth either. This was because he didn't want to take responsibility if they ever got caught in the act. Ortis was just such a person. He wasn't the type to stand firm in the face of scolding. If possible, he always preferred to slyly step back and use other people as cover. He hated the thought of being cowardly and running away on his own. But he was still willing to do so if it couldn't be helped and if everyone else was doing it. As Ortis got older, with the wisdom he had accumulated over the years, he still believed that the best course of action was to keep your head low and avoid standing out. But ironically, Ortis' life didn't end up going that way. Ortis had found himself in a position where few others in this entire country were held in as much regard as he was. As a result, he often got caught up in things that were beyond his natural ability to handle, and this subjugation expedition was no different. Ortis didn't think of himself as a hero, nor did he believe that he deserved the opportunity to be one. When the goal of the expedition had changed from subjugating a pirate empress to subjugating a demon king, the reason that Ortis had agreed to move forward after finishing his own deliberations wasn't that he held unquestionable faith in their success. It was because he didn't want to take responsibility for the aftermath of not doing so. And with the hero, the saint, and an archwizard with them, he felt like they could win. So Ortis decided to keep his head low and quietly allow himself to get carried away by their air of purpose and determination so that afterward, he could still brag about it if everything ended up going well. However, now, how strange, Ortis thought to himself. Now there was no reason for him to step forward. Eugene Lionheart had been the protagonist of this battle from the very beginning. While Eugene was away from the battlefield, Ortis had to risk his life and stand in the way of the Demon King. But now that Eugene had returned, there was no need for Ortis to continue doing so. However, contrary to such thoughts, Ortis' body was moving forward. Even though there shouldn't be any need for him to do so, he still stepped forward to block the Demon King from one side while swinging his sword. Was it because they needed to win at all costs? Yes, that was certainly important. However, aside from that, Ortis also had the feeling that this was just what he needed to do. Ortis gave in. Fine then. Although the core of her existence had been threatened, the Demon King's dark power remained a vicious threat. Even as her dark power was being blocked by the Holy Sword and Sienna's magic was destroying her body, murderous intent still shone in the Demon King's eyes. To think that I also had this side to me, Ortis thought wryly. The instincts that he had trained over his long career made him extend his sword. Plunk. The heavy weight of the sudden blow flung his body backward, but Ortis' lips twitched into a strained smile. The power of Iris Demoni had manifested without any sign and had targeted the priests who were supporting the saint. However, thanks to Ortis, the Demon King's Demoni was unable to kill the priests as she had hoped. Enraged, the Demon King unleashed her demonized power once more. Dark matter rained down on Ortis, who hadn't yet righted himself after being thrown backward. However, once again the Demon King's plan went awry. Eugene's sword split apart the dark matter, and at the same time an arrow struck Ortis' body. Ivik. Ortis thought in surprise. The arrow that had struck his body wasn't sharpened. When it hit him, all it did was push him away. Ortis, who was pushed backward a few more steps by the arrow, unconsciously let out a snort. To think that he would actually end up receiving help from that man. Meanwhile, Ivik thought to himself, I never knew that Ortis could fight so fiercely. And to think that he would actually end up saving Ortis. Ivik also let out a snort as this thought ran through his head. Ivik knocked another arrow on his bowstring as he turned his gaze back towards the Demon King. Ha! Ivik let out a sigh without even realizing that he was doing so. He could have shot another arrow, but he wasn't able to release the bowstring. To think even at this distance. The site of the battle was only at a distance where Ivik should have been able to take in everything with just a single glance, but he just couldn't see anything. He was able to take in the scene as a whole, but he couldn't understand or even attempt to follow any of the movements that were taking place within that chaos. So this is how much of a gap there is. Ivik muttered in disbelief. Earlier, Eugene had already been so much stronger and faster that Ivik had been struggling to believe it. But Eugene's current movements couldn't even be compared to what he had shown earlier. Ivik felt hollow and ridiculous. Idlers who liked to make things like lists usually mentioned a fixed group of people whenever they discussed who was the greatest knight on the continent, but all of that was now just empty talk. There was no need for any other name to come up when discussing who should be at the top of that list. It was Eugene Lionheart. After today, the whole continent would be aware of that fact. If they survived, Ivik would be the first to start telling people all about it at the nearest pub. Carmen also had the exact same thought. She wasn't just thinking about it either. She could feel the truth of it with her entire body. She was no longer able to keep up with the flow of this battle. Even if Carmen tried her best, she was ultimately slower and weaker than Eugene. They had reached the same rank in the White Flame formula at the 7th star, but why was there still such a difference between them? No, in the first place, were those flames really from the White Flame formula? Carmen wondered. Those unorthodox, black flames. Fush. The Demon King's dark power barely grazed the ends of her hair. While spinning her body like a top in midair, Carmen swung her leg. Bam. Although her kick was blocked by a barrier, it still managed to pause the Demon King's movements for a few seconds. The Demon King grunted, "Gag." Eugene took advantage of the opening to thrust the holy sword into the Demon King's throat. The moment the sword penetrated her flesh, flames exploded, covering the Demon King's entire body. Plakunk. Carmen's heaven genocide fully extended itself. Pure white flames gathered in the center of her palm. Carmen's most powerful technique, Destiny Breaker, slammed into the Demon King. Brr. Flames engulfed the Demon King and then transformed into a fiery whirlwind that soared into the sky. Carmen's white flames became intertwined with Eugene's black flames. The wings of prominence flared upwards. The fluttering feathers clung to each other, creating black spots. Crack. Eclipses fell from the sky, bombing the Demon King and sending her and the whirlwind of flames crashing down. Iris was dazed. She wasn't even able to keep screaming, and she didn't have the strength left to provide any meaningful resistance to the downward force acting on her. All that the Demon King could do was die and be revived several times over as she kept getting pushed downwards by the immense force. Iris realized, am I really, truly, going to die? Fush. The Demon King's body crashed into the sea. It was only after the Demon King entered the sea that she was freed from the force of the bombarding eclipses. She might really die here. The truth that she didn't want to accept kept circulating in her head. The weight of the word, death, seemed to be dragging the Demon King further into the abyss. Dying? Her? Even though she had become a Demon King? She was dying without having done anything, without having left any legacy? Iris hesitated. If I run away. Fate often repeats itself. The words left by the Demon King of incarceration began to circle inside her head. Don't be afraid, Iris. She saw the former Demon King of Fury silently mouth these words. He's using ignition. He shouldn't have much time left now, Iris thought calmly. After activating ignition, he could only last 10 minutes at the very most. How much of that time had already passed? How much of her own dark power, life force, and immortality was left? As long as she could stay alive until the duration of ignition was over. I'll win, Iris realized. But was that really the case? Ryayap. The sea around the Demon King split apart so that she was no longer surrounded by seawater. The Demon King widened her eyes as she looked up, only to see the holy sword overflowing with black flames. The sword had unleashed the slash that had just split apart the sea. Iris told herself, I just need to last until ignition ends. But just how many minutes more would she be able to hold on? Such a thought kept repeating itself inside the Demon King's head. And if she managed to endure it? After that, would she really be able to win? Even if Hamel was forced to stop fighting, there were still the others, the wise Sienna and the Saint. This might not have been the case earlier, but for the current Demon King who was close to the end of the line, she couldn't be sure that she would definitely be able to win against those two opponents. Moreover, Carmen, Ordis, and Ivik were also here. In her current state, even they could pose a threat to her. Escape. This word once again reappeared in the Demon King's mind. No, the Demon King denied the thought as soon as it popped up in her head. It was a foolish idea. There was no running from this. As for victory, or survival, those were also foolish desires. The Demon King faced the very essence of her desires hidden deep within her heart. It was true that she did want victory and a chance to seek glory. However, the most fundamental thing that she desired was revenge. Revenge on whom? On him, Hamel. No matter what might happen, she needed to kill Hamel. Even if it meant that she would be unable to take her rightful place as the Demon King. Even if it meant that she would die here today. Even if she couldn't inflict her fury on the rest of the world. As the Demon King and as Iris, killing Hamel was more important than anything else. It was what Iris wanted more than glory, victory, or even her own survival. Hamel had to die here in this sea. For my father, Iris solemnly vowed. Fear disappeared from the Demon King's swirling emotions. Its absence was filled with her desire for revenge. The choice that the Demon King had ultimately come to wasn't to find some way to survive or run away. No, she was going to keep fighting and kill Hamel no matter what. That was what a Demon King should do. The walls of the dark Red Sea began to flow back down. The Demon King, leaping upwards, ignored everything else to rush at Eugene. Her killing intent was infused into all of her remaining dark power. Instead of any defenses or barriers, all of her strength was focused on attacking with her swinging hands and feet. Bang! Struck by these hits, Eugene was pulled backward. At first, the Demon King thought he might be trying to buy time, so she was surprised when he charged her in reverse. After all, such a fight was exactly what Eugene wanted. Eugene was more aware than anyone else that his time was running out fast. In an instant, they had distanced themselves from the sea and the remaining ships. Letting out a snarl, the Demon King swung both of her hands at him. But the flames of the white flame formula stood ready as Eugene tightly gripped the holy sword with both hands. Bam 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 bam. Dark power collided with flames, shattering against each other. The wings of prominence suddenly radiated light. The feathers then scattered from the wings and immediately transformed into black dots before they had even gone very far. But the black dots that were shot at her were all blocked by Iris Demoni. Once she had prevented their explosions, the Demon King shot out her fist again. Boom! The holy sword shook. The palms of Eugene's hands throbbed as he held on tightly to the holy sword. Eugene swallowed the blood rising in the back of his throat and swung the holy sword once more. Its light was so intense that it didn't seem like it could even get any brighter. However, it still couldn't completely stifle the Demon King's dark power. As the Demon King of Fury went on a rampage, she even began converting her own life force into dark power. Swish! A spear of magic pierced through the sky. It was a spell fired by Sienna. The Demon King avoided its trajectory but didn't move to intercept Sienna. Her murderous desire to kill Hamel/Eugene, no matter what, was even beginning to claw at Eugene's own emotions. Though the same goes for me, Eugene vowed. If he had just killed her 300 years ago, there wouldn't have been any problems now. None of the bullshit currently happening in this sea would have happened either. And Seal, she wouldn't have had to throw herself in front of Eugene to save him. Crack. Eugene's grip on the hilt of the holy sword tightened even further. Agarotha's divine power had now completely enveloped his left hand. But its light only served to drive the Demon King even crazier. As a Demon King, she could recognize what this light was. Die! The Demon King screamed as blood poured from her mouth. Boom! Every time they collided at full strength, Eugene's heart throbbed as his stars were pushed past their limits by ignition. The 7 stars began to completely collapse from the strain of having generated such a torrent of mana until now. Even so, the resonance and rotation of the stars never stopped. The white flame formula's stars were also acting as the cores that controlled his mana. If a star were to shatter, that meant one of his cores would also have shattered. Once the core was broken, the person would usually die. Even if they were lucky, they would be crippled for the rest of their life. However, Eugene currently couldn't feel any pain, let alone a sense of his impending death. The flames stoked by ignition were able to create a new star each time one of them shattered. The tens and hundreds of stars that had already shattered so far were enough to form a galaxy inside Eugene. Eugene had managed to reach the 7th star of the white flame formula. No, Eugene's white flame formula had even begun to break down the boundary that came after the 7th star. He was already stronger than the vermouth he had known in his past life, but through this battle he would become even stronger than that vermouth. For the sake of that desire, Eugene had been evolving the white flame formula even before this battle had begun. Eugene had to overcome his limits in order to achieve this desire, and in the completion of this evolution, a miracle was slowly revealing itself inside Eugene. It's still not enough, Eugene decided. He was starting to lose consciousness, But Eugene refused to lose hold of who he was. He was Hamel Dynas and he was Eugene Lionheart. Eugene glanced down at his hands that were holding the holy sword. On his left hand, Agarotha's ring was so cracked that it seemed as if it would shatter with any movement. Eugene's desire had led to a miracle. This miracle was a result of Eugene's own will, as well as the will remaining within Agarotha's ring. Just like how the god of light answered his believers' prayers to perform his miracles, Agaroth had granted Eugene a miracle in response to his desire. But why had the ring granted him such a miracle? Boom! The holy sword was pushed back once more. Similar to how Eugene had risked setting himself on fire, the Demon King was doing the same. The darkness of the Demon King, who was burning everything that she had left, was unceasing in its attempts to overwhelm the light of the holy sword. However, it still wasn't able to stifle that light. That flickering light was fueled by the power of the holy sword and supported by the faith of the saint and the priests. As long as they kept their faith, the light of the holy sword wouldn't go out. The Moonlight Sword. The Sword of Destruction. The White Flame Formula. The legacy left by Vermouth. The Holy Sword. What the God of Light left to the world. It was funny. Even the body that Eugene Lionheart had used to get here now was part of Vermouth's plan. The weapons that Eugene used and the power dwelling within his body, all of them had been given to him either by Vermouth or someone else. It has to be you. What could those words mean? Did Vermouth mean that Hamel was the one who would make the best use of the things that he had arranged? Or perhaps, was he telling Hamel that there was something special about himself that even Hamel didn't know about? So that's the case, Eugene suddenly realized. He actually did have something that he hadn't received from someone else. It was something that Hamel had possessed right from the very start. Whether it was back 300 years ago, right now, or even in the distant past. He now knew who the man sitting on the mountain of corpses had been. He knew the man who had walked across a battlefield filled with corpses in despair. He knew the man who had been weeping as the waves and the fog had erased everything. That man was... Eugene put away the holy sword, somehow sheathing it deep within his own heart. His empty left hand moved. The ring he had been wearing on his left ring finger as a symbol of a contract, cooperation, and a promise shattered. After reuniting with the existence known as Eugene, it was only now that Agarotha's ring had fulfilled its designated contract and reached its assigned fate. Neither meeting Ariartel nor receiving Agarotha's ring had been a coincidence. No matter what, this ring would have eventually reached Eugene. From this sudden accidental realization, Eugene's suspicions had become a certainty. Eugene's left hand reached towards his chest. Iris frowned. What is he doing? She couldn't tell the reasons for Eugene's behavior. Why had he put away the holy sword? Was he giving up the fight? These were some of the Demon King's suspicions. The time had come. The flames of ignition had died away. From the current Eugene, the same intense surge of mana that he had previously given off could no longer be felt. What was left was... What was remaining was... something unique. I've won, the Demon King of Fury celebrated as she stepped forward. She was one step closer to revenge for her father, for herself, for everyone. As long as she killed Hamel here, she would have achieved something with her life. If she managed to get her revenge, she could retreat from this battle satisfied and with a joyful heart. At this moment, the Demon King was confident of her victory and felt relieved that she had managed to escape death. But only for a very short moment. Her vision turned black. A wave of darkness appeared out of nowhere and blocked the Demon King's way forward, leaving the Demon King's body frozen for a few seconds. Is this a spell? Iris questioned. No, this wasn't magic. This darkness and oppression. After being flustered for a second, the Demon King activated the power of her demon eye. The darkness blocking her way forward collided with the ability activated by the Demon King and cancelled each other out. But that short moment had spelled the difference between success and failure. Even if the Demon King hadn't been flustered by that mysterious darkness, even if she hadn't been blocked by that unknown force, the results wouldn't have changed. Even if she had taken one more step without anything blocking her way forward, the Demon King still wouldn't have been able to achieve her revenge. The left hand Eugene placed on his chest clutched at something. What he pulled from there was something that had been placed within Eugene/Hamel from the very start. It wasn't something he had ever received from anyone else. It belonged to Eugene alone. The Divine Sword. As the universe that Eugene held within his chest was opened, A sword emerged from his heart. The sword shone with the red light of Agarotha's divine power. Following Eugene's will, the sword forged out of this intangible divine power fully emerged and slashed forward. Ah, Iris gasped. A light that the Demon King knew all too well engulfed her sight. The world was cut in two. Chapter 376. The Demon King of Fury, 10. The Demon King tried to escape out of range, but she failed. She then poured all of her remaining dark power into activating her demonize ability. Finally, she tried to block the blow by directly holding out both her hands. But it was impossible. The moment the blood-red slash touched her, the Demon King was left with no choice but to recognize this fact. Just like in the distant past, that sword made the Demon King realize the meaning of defeat. Her father, the previous Demon King of Fury, had managed to escape from his defeat, but Iris, the current Demon King of Fury, wasn't even able to escape. Red light scattered everywhere. Ha! The Demon King laughed as she slowly stepped back. She didn't want to lower her head. She had no desire to directly see what had become of her body. However, her intuition led the Demon King to realize many things. She had already been defeated, and death was coming for her soon. A death that was impossible for her to avoid. The Demon King couldn't help but laugh out of frustration. How about a final struggle? But she couldn't even do that. When she had stretched out her hands towards the approaching slash, that was the last futile struggle that the Demon King could have made. Have you, the Demon King spoke up after standing there in silence, also seen it? Or perhaps could you have remembered it? Was there even a need to reply to that sort of question? Eugene stared at the Demon King with cold eyes. There weren't any visible wounds on Iris' body. However, the holy sword had sliced deep into the Demon King. It was impossible for the current Demon King to resurrect from those wounds. In other words, the words that the Demon King was spouting now were the last words that she would ever leave in this world. Get lost, Eugene snorted. Just because those were her last words didn't mean Eugene had to respect them. For Eugene, something like a Demon King was an existence that should never be respected or accommodated. No, even setting aside the fact that she was a Demon King, Iris herself wasn't someone that he could respect. In Eugene's perspective, Iris was a fucking bitch. As the first Dark Elf, she had corrupted many of the Elven Rangers who had once followed her command and brutally killed those who had resisted. Even after that, while leading the armies of Fury, she had committed countless acts that an elf should never do when facing another elf, while slaughtering and trampling all those who had been her comrades in the past. Following this, she had continued to act as a scout for the armies of Fury and killed countless people. He didn't know what Iris had gotten to after the war ended. He didn't know what kind of shit she had been involved in Helmuth. But that honestly didn't matter to Eugene. However, he did know the things she had done in this sea. Eugene had been left with a specific opinion of her based on what she had gotten up to after reaching this sea. Many people had died because of her. This battlefield was only one of the many battlefields that Eugene had chosen to take part in. However, Eugene had experienced far worse battlefields than this one. If he felt responsible for each death that happened on the battlefield and allowed himself to be burdened by that guilt, Eugene would never be able to maintain his sanity. Even if he hadn't chosen to take part in this battle, many more people would have ultimately died than the ones who died here today. However, rather than feeling guilt, it was acceptable for him to feel rage instead. It was healthy for him to hate his opponents. Eugene was just that kind of person, and even at this very moment he was adhering to such behavior. Eugene had no intention of listening to the Demon King's last words. He had no intention of speaking to the Demon King either. At first, he had felt some doubts about this general situation. However, he currently didn't feel like there was any need to question the Demon King about these doubts. Eugene definitely had noticed something from the Demon King's questions. She had asked him if he remembered it. But in the first place, that was something that had originated from inside of Eugene. Also, there wasn't even enough time left to hold such a conversation with the Demon King either. As Eugene was standing there in silence, someone approached his side. It was Sienna Meridian. Her lips were red from the blood she had coughed up. Sienna glared at the Demon King, and the Demon King looked back at Sienna, her face stoic and empty. "Huh?" The Demon King's lips twitched as she laughed. The Demon King also didn't want to leave behind any last words of regret in this situation, deeming such an act to be dirty and shameful. Because from the Demon King's or Iris' own perspective, she hadn't done anything wrong. As for her regrets about her death and her fears, she absolutely refused to reveal such things in front of these hateful enemies. So instead Iris pronounced a curse: "You will fail." She poured all her remaining regrets, rage, hatred, murderous intent, fury, and the other emotions surrounding her own oncoming death into the curse that she spat out. All of you humans will definitely fail. You will never achieve anything." With each word she uttered, Iris' body was disintegrating. As her red eyes shone angrily, she continued speaking, "You will never ever comprehend how much of a monster the Demon King of Incarceration truly is. Even if you sacrifice everything, you will still be unable to defeat the Demon King of Incarceration." Her death curse flew at them like an ominous ghost. The curse that fell from Iris' lips made the space around them tremble as it shadowed Eugene's mind. Eugene smelled the scent of blood and heard the sounds of screaming, laughter, and chains rattling. "Your future will be filled with an inevitable and irresistible despair. Your fate." Iris paused before bursting into frenzied laughter. "Haha, that's right. Seems that fate really does repeat itself. Just like how 300 years ago, Vermouth managed to overcome fury only to kneel before incarceration, it will be the same this time as well. Because it has always been that way." Iris' shoulders were shaking with her laughter. As the curse continued to flow from her lips, her body's disintegration accelerated. Iris raised her disintegrating finger to point at Eugene and Sienna. "You will definitely die," Iris vowed. "You will never ever be allowed to serve." "You crazy bitch," Sienna, who had been listening silently, suddenly blurted out. Narrowing cold, remorseless eyes, she flew through the sky towards Iris. "I don't know anything about our failure or whatever else you said, but first of all, you're definitely dying before us, right?" Sienna taunted. Bam. Her open palm slammed into Iris' cheek. Sienna continued, "Ultimately, your curse is just the sour parting words of a loser, Iris. In the end, what exactly have you left behind as a legacy? You even killed all of the dark elves who followed you here. Even after going so far, you still weren't able to achieve anything, absolutely nothing." Bam. Sienna's hand slapped Iris once more. "Even after becoming a demon king, what did you do?" Sienna asked mockingly. "Iris, even though you became a demon king, you couldn't even leave this sea. The world will never know your name or the name of the new demon king of fury. It seems that I've made a mistake. By tomorrow, the whole world will know of the demon king of fury, though they'll know it as the name of an idiot who died 300 years ago and perished in this era as well." Sienna didn't continue to slap Iris. While shaking her wrist, she ridiculed Iris. "Do you see what you've done, Iris? Even after abandoning your family, you still failed. And you've even smeared mud on the name of the one you so loved and cherished, the one you so mourned, the Demon King of Fury. You've failed in everything, but do you still think you have the right to tell us that we will fail?" Iris' eyes trembled. She opened her mouth to say something, but Sienna's hand wrapped around Iris' throat. "Your life, your very existence holds no meaning or value," Sienna coldly stated. "However, to us, for me there is something. Because at least I will enjoy watching you die. I am overjoyed to see you, the person I so wanted to kill, die without accomplishing anything." She could still clearly remember the corpses of the elves who had died after being burned alive. Still glaring into Iris' eyes, Sienna let go of her neck. 300 years ago, when we defeated the Demon King of Fury, there were still people left to mourn the death of Fury. You, Oberon, and your subordinates, Eugene finally addressed Iris. But now there is no one who will mourn your loss. Instead, they will only ridicule you. Iris' body had almost completely disappeared. There was barely anything left of her, not her hair, nose, or lips. However, Iris' emotions could still be guessed from the way that her wide-open eyes were trembling. "So you who are dying here and now, how would you know whether or not we will fail?" Eugene demanded. Even if she still had lips, Iris didn't have the will to keep cursing them. The reality that she had refused to admit until the very end tore all of her last remaining emotions into pieces. She had cursed them to feel despair, but it was now Iris who was feeling utter despair. Ah. Though her voice couldn't be heard, Iris was sobbing. Her eyes, which were the last to disappear, were trembling with unshed tears. Finally, Iris, the Demon King of Fury, completely disappeared. She had dissipated into a black ash that floated in the air for a moment before vanishing. The dark skies instantly became brighter in the blink of an eye, while the dark red sea also returned to its original blue color simultaneously. Eugene looked at the divine sword he was holding in his left hand. His ring had completely shattered. The divine sword was also gradually breaking into pieces and disappearing. Eugene stared down at the divine sword with bitter and complex feelings. "Why are you crying?" Eugene raised his head and asked. He had spotted Sienna, who was standing next to him, silently shedding tears. Wiping away her tears with her fingers, Sienna explained, "Because I'm happy." She didn't have even the slightest sympathy for Iris. The tears that Sienna was currently shedding were tears of satisfaction at having seen the death of her most hated enemy of these past 300 years. So, would Sienna become depressed because of the loss of her goal? There was no way that would happen. Her revenge only had meaning because it had been achieved. "What exactly is that sword?" Sienna turned her head and asked, wiping away a few small tears. The sword in Eugene's left hand didn't have any substance to it. It wasn't made of mana either. Naturally, that meant it couldn't be a spell. The sword seemed to be made of a red light. Although it was now faint and fading away when Eugene had first pulled the sword out of his chest, it had emitted a red light so intense that it had even erased the darkness of the Devildom and the light of the holy sword. "It's a secret," Eugene grunted. The light in Sienna's eyes grew sharp at this reply. Leaning over towards Eugene, she probed, "A secret? At this point, what secrets could there be between us?" "I'll tell you about it in a bit," Eugene prevaricated. The divine sword had now completely disappeared. Sienna was stubbornly sticking to his side, but Eugene didn't pay any attention to Sienna. However, Sienna didn't find fault with him over this, because she knew exactly where Eugene was looking. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. When the sea had been split apart, Scalia, secretly Noir Giabella, wasn't all that surprised by the phenomenon. The sea had split apart? What was so impressive about that? A strange phenomenon that had parted the sea down to the seabed while leaving the sea walls standing separated without flowing back down might seem impressive to humans, but it wasn't anything amazing to Noir. Although she didn't see the point in doing so if she had to, Noir could also split the sea dozens of times over if she wanted to. As for slaying the Demon King, that also didn't come as a huge surprise to Noir. She had trusted that if Hamel was the one fighting her, he would be able to kill the Demon King. After all, he couldn't move on to the next stage without first killing the Demon King of Fury. More surprising than him splitting apart the sea or slaying the Demon King was the sword and the strength that Hamel had drawn out at the end. Another surprising thing was what had just happened with Seal. How absurd, Noir shook her head. Usually Noir would never have such a thought. This was because, as the possessor of the demon eye of fantasy, almost nothing existed that could truly seem absurd to her. The only things Noir could think of as absurd and impossible for her to even imagine were things like her own death. However, what she was seeing now was something truly absurd. At the very least, in all of the years that she had lived until now, Noir had never once seen anything like this, nor had she heard the slightest rumor of this happening. And despite everything else she had meddled in, Noir hadn't done anything to cause this result. All she had done was feel sympathy for this young, beautiful girl who had had one of her eyes destroyed. Also, because she had wanted to hear a grudging thanks from Hamel, she had just added her own bit of help to the first aid applied to Seal's wounds. It wasn't like she had applied anything suspicious on top of that first aid. She had simply poured the Shimuan royal family's panacea in Scalia's possession into Seal's empty left eye socket. Could a medicine made from a blue dragon's horn really have this effect? Noir wondered. But that was a ridiculous idea. Noir didn't even spare a second thought to consider that possibility. Even if she accepted that the royal family's panacea could regenerate a completely destroyed eye, and let's just say that there might indeed be something special about that regenerated eye. However, it was impossible for the result to be a demon eye. Yet Noir clearly recalled what she had just seen. The moment that she poured out the panacea, no, before the panacea had even touched her, Seal's missing eye had already regenerated. But that, could it really have been called regeneration? Would it be better to call it rebirth? In Noir's opinion, what had happened just now was the demon eye somehow choosing to be reborn in that place. In the first place, demonies were something that only demon folk could be born with or receive. Even if they wanted to, there was no way for humans to possess them. Those blood-red air currents, which had suddenly swirled up from the eye socket that had been treated with an elixir and holy water, had swallowed up all of the Shimuan royalty's panacea without spilling a single particle. Following this, both of Seal's eyes had reopened as if they had both been there from the very beginning. Her eyes still held the golden hue of the Lionheart clan. However, the newly born left eye possessed a slightly different shade from the original right eye. Seal had been struck dumb with shock upon reawakening. Just like Noir, she was also unable to control her surprise. With a trembling hand, she carefully touched her face. She recalled her left eye disappearing with a popping sound. Her vision had turned red and then darkened. That was where her memories of the event ended. However, what she recalled was enough for her to know what had happened to her. Her eye had been completely destroyed. Or at least that was how it should have been before she lost consciousness. So what happened? Seal wondered. The moment she regained consciousness, a light had suddenly seeped into the eye that should have been unable to see anything. The very first thing that Seal saw as she came to her senses was Scalia's extremely flustered expression. But all of Seal's thoughts were focused on something different. Even though Scalia was right in front of her, Seal's only thoughts were of Eugene. She had pushed him away and then fallen forward to take his place, but she couldn't recall anything after that. Had she been able to save Eugene like she had hoped? What about the battle against the Demon King? Looking past Scalia's head, Seal saw Eugene standing high in the still darkened skies. She saw Eugene simply standing there as the Demon King approached him. The moment she thought she couldn't let Iris get any closer to him, her left eye heated up and began to throb as if it had been pricked with a soldering iron. "It really is a demon eye," Noir whispered as she examined Seal's left eye closely. Seal's eye didn't shine with a bright light. Instead, it was cloudy. The iris around her pitch-black pupil appeared to have a dark, murky yellow shade rather than the original golden hue. "What you used just now was your demon eye. But it seems you used it without even being aware you were doing so." Noir questioned. Seal stammered, "A demon eye?" Noir smiled. This is truly fascinating. The darkness that just blocked Iris from going forward. That was the power of the demon eye of darkness. Noir's eyes sparkled brightly with curiosity. Holding Seal's cheeks firmly with both hands, she pressed her face close to Seal's. Noir asked her, "Why have you, a descendant of Vermouth who bears the blood of the Lionheart clan, been bestowed with a demon eye? And not just any demon eye, but Iris' demon eye of darkness at that." Had Iris given her this demon eye? But that was completely absurd. What reason would Iris have for doing so? Or perhaps, was it the demon eye of darkness? Was it the lingering traces of power left over from the moment that Seal had lost that eye? That doesn't make any sense either, Noir decided. There's no way that a demon eye would appear here just because of something like that. If getting your eye destroyed by a demon eye was the trigger for a new demon eye to be born in its place, then Noir would have already implanted countless humans and demons with demonies over the past 300 years. Noir paused. Hold on, what caused Iris to freeze in place like that? The demon eye of darkness shouldn't have that sort of ability. Noir's face gradually drew even closer to Seal's. Iris' actions had been halted by some outside force. That wasn't an ability that the demon eye of darkness should possess. It hadn't been because of Sienna's magic or the saint's miracles either. It had taken a power that went against all reason, the power of a demon eye. There's no way. Could it be that your eyes possess two abilities? Noir marveled. He was curious. If she could have her way, Noir really felt like plucking Seal's eyes out right now to examine them. But if that was considered as going too far, Noir at least wanted to take the whole person away with her. However, she wouldn't be able to satisfy such urges. A murderous intent sending shivers down her spine drove Noir to stand up. "How wonderful!" Noir exclaimed with a mischievous smile as she spread her arms wide. She had spotted Eugene and Sienna descending in her direction. The Saint, Carmen, and the others were also flying over from the vessels at the front. The hero, "O gallant Eugene Lionheart, you have truly managed to subjugate the Demon King of Fury. On behalf of the Shimuan royal family, we, the Princess Scalia Animus, commend you for your utmost efforts," Noir declared. She was putting on quite the performance. From Noir's perspective, her current actions were just a casual joke between friends. However, Eugene didn't feel the same way. He knew the identity of the one currently possessing Scalia, and he could see Seal lying down right at her feet. As Seal attempted to stagger to her feet, Eugene also noticed there was something different about Seal's left eye. "Oh my," Noir suddenly realized. "This might just cause a misunderstanding." Noir quickly grasped the situation and took a step away from Seal. Dear Eugene, Noir began, no longer playing the part of Princess Scalia. In truth, she wanted to call him her Dear Hamel, but Noir didn't want to share the sweet secret that was being kept between them with the rest of the trash gathered here. Noir smiled charmingly. It seems that you've come to a huge misunderstanding. Eugene didn't respond to those words. His body might be screaming in agony now that ignition had ended, but Eugene ignored those cries and forced his body to accelerate. A dagger drawn from between the folds of his cloak was thrust into Scalia's chest. Chapter 377. The Abyss, 1. Every eye around widened in horror. The hero had descended after defeating the reincarnated Demon King of Fury. However, in an unexpected turn of events, he had suddenly thrust a dagger into the chest of the princess who was offering him accolades. The hero was destined to carve his name into the annals of history but had now done something unthinkable. The shock of this was inevitable for those unaware of the underlying circumstances. Noir herself was stunned as well. She definitely had not anticipated a sudden attack without even exchanging a single word, and with this dagger no less, forged not from metal but from divine power. Although it pierced right through the heart, it brought no harm or pain to Scalia, the true owner of this body. However, it was different for Noir. She felt as if her chest had been genuinely pierced. No, the pain even beyond that. Noir wasn't possessing Scalia using her true body but was using a low-level night demon to be in control of Scalia's body. The night demon couldn't withstand the dagger's power, and the agony it experienced transmitted directly to Noir, who was controlling the night demon. How splendid, Noir thought. She registered the encroaching death, a sensation both familiar and strange to her. Throughout her life she had faced death many times over. Thus she experienced no thrill in such demise. But it was a whole other story if the adversary was Hamel. A death that was once mundane, familiar, and even tedious became exhilarating, delightful, and sweet just because Hamel was the one gifting it to her. There was unhindered killing intent, and the resolution to kill without bothering to initiate dialogue or hear her words was just refreshing. Even now, Hamel's eyes twinkled with hatred and murderous intent. He displayed not a shred of hesitation or doubt in his actions. What particularly enthralled Noir was the dagger now lodged in her chest. It was a blade forged from divine power, but it wasn't a weapon prepared for the Demon King. If it were, it would have been used long ago. Hamel had refrained from using this weapon throughout the battle with the Demon King. What did this signify? It was for me, Noir concluded. He hadn't conjured it just now. Instead, he had kept it with him after preparing it in advance. He knew I would come. Noir felt a shiver of excitement at this thought. Weren't they just too compatible? It was perfect. Noir grinned brightly as she knelt on one knee. Eugene supported her waist to prevent her from collapsing, their embrace resembling that of lovers. Don't we know each other too well? Noir whispered softly. Without bothering to respond to her words, Eugene twisted the dagger deeper. He had supported her waist to avoid injuring Scalia's body, but seeing Noir's smile and hearing her words, he felt he had done something unnecessary. Princess. Mr. Eugene. What on earth are you doing? Ivik and Ordis screamed as they rushed over. After being frozen in place, the royal guards began to inch towards Eugene. At that moment Sienna arrived from the sky. Wait, Sienna commanded as she glared while raising frost. A magical barrier enveloped the surroundings, preventing others from entering and blocking the way. Part of the Demon King's malice has remained within Princess Scalia, Sienna stated solemnly. Lady Sienna, what are you saying? Came a startled reply. Do you think I would lie about something like this? The purification will be over soon, so don't come any closer, Sienna warned in a firm tone. Following that stern warning, Sienna exchanged a look with Christina, who approached with traces of blood at the corner of her mouth, and they stepped into the barrier together. A laugh echoed from Noir as she watched Sienna. Although we weren't that close, can't we just exchange greetings after meeting each other 300 years later? Get lost, you whore, Sienna responded coldly. The severity of the insult did nothing to affect Noir, who only chuckled even more gaily. It's impressive that you haven't changed even one bit after all this time, Sienna Meridian. And who might you be? Christina Rogerus? Or perhaps, are you actually the reincarnation of Anise Slywood? Christina responded with a piercing glare instead of responding to Noir's words. It was best to keep information about her possession a secret, a sentiment shared by a niece. Noir shrugged and turned to look at Eugene, saying with delight, "I'm pleased, my Hamel." The night demon possessing Scalia was being purified and slowly disappearing. Even Noir couldn't do anything to change the outcome. "You knew I was coming and prepared a gift for me. Sadly, I didn't bring any gifts for you. It seems I was lacking in preparations and consideration this time," Noir chatted airily, to which Eugene growled, "What have you done?" Behind Eugene, Seal sat, crumpled to the ground, still unable to comprehend the situation fully. She was trembling slightly due to an unfamiliar sensation in her left eye. Sienna and Christina rushed closer to her. "I understand how this may look, but I assure you it's just a misunderstanding. Hamel, I didn't do anything." "Oh, I'm sorry, Hamel. It just slipped out," Noir said before casting Seal a sideways glance. A grimace appeared on her face. No, it seems fine. And since when does she know about your identity? Surely it wasn't before me, right?" "I asked what you did," Eugene repeated, looking grim. "I did nothing," Noir insisted sincerely, genuinely feeling unjustly accused. "Think about it logically, Hamel. Although I am immensely talented, I don't possess the ability to implant a demon eye in a human. You know this as well, don't you? It's impossible for humans to harbor a demon eye." Silence followed before Noir continued. "The same goes for black wizards. Despite forming contracts with high-level demons or even with the demon kings directly, their essence as a human does not change. That's why Edmund was obsessed with changing his race to be reborn as a demon king. No matter how high a black wizard climbs, they cannot enjoy the privileges of a demon as long as they remain human." Eugene knew well what Noir was saying. It was true that a demon eye could never reside within a human. Of course, if it were the demon king of incarceration, maybe he could implant a demon eye in a human. But I can't do it. After all, I am not a demon king. "A demon eye?" Seal touched her left eye, finding the persistent ache gone and her vision as clear as her right eye. It was then that realization dawned upon her. Her eye's transformation was irreversible. She could feel it in her guts. But before long, something akin to an instinct rooted deep within had come to enlighten Seal. She understood that her left eye was no longer ordinary. It harbored an unsettling power. "I don't know anything about this matter. Hamel, I tried to look after that child's wounds for your sake," Noir argued, trying to rid herself of the misunderstanding. She could no longer expect Hamel's gratitude due to Seal unwittingly awakening the demon eye. Yet Noir did not harbor regrets over this fact. She felt even more joy and delight, knowing that she had occupied a place in Hamel's mind and had even received a gift from him. "But I know this, Hamel. That child's demon eye is special. It harbors two distinct abilities. One is Iris' demon eye of darkness. The other is, well, shall we call it the demon eye of immobility? What do you think?" Noir said slowly. "Fuck off," retorted Eugene. "Oh, you could be a little kinder with your words. Hamel, even without your urging, I'll leave soon. But before I go, could you tell me one thing?" Noir asked, sounding hurt. Noir's voice gradually faded as she clung to her drifting consciousness and whispered, "The sword that killed the demon king." Eugene just stared at Noir. "What on earth is it? In my long life I have never seen such a sword. That red hue. It's different from the divine power bestowed through human belief. It is more fundamental, more primal," Noir mused, pondering upon the true identity of Hamel's weapon. "I don't know," spat Eugene with a cold voice before drawing his dagger. "Lies." That accusation was the last word Noir could utter before vanishing. As her vision waned, Noir looked straight at Eugene. With a swoosh, black mist flowed out from Scalia's body. Eugene disregarded the dissipating mist and examined Scalia's condition. The night demon corrupting her mind had been purified, but Scalia's consciousness had not returned. What an unlucky princess, Eugene thought. Having been possessed by a night demon twice, and that too by Noir Giabella herself no less, was truly something. After carefully laying Scalia on the ground, Eugene turned to look at Seal. "Do you feel strange or anything?" he asked cautiously while approaching her. Seal didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked alternatingly at Christina and Sienna. The two of them were holding onto each of her hands. Not really," Seal replied with a shaky expression. Sienna, Christina, and Anise came to the same conclusion after observing her. There was not a trace of dark power in Seal's body, nor any signs of black magic. In the first place, a demon eye wasn't magic or black magic. It was merely an organ that utilized dark power. The authority manifested by a demon eye resembled more a miracle of divine power than magic. It did not require any formulas or anything of the sort. The wielder of the demon eye brought forth its power through will and dark power alone. But that's what made this situation even stranger. There was no trace of dark power in Seal, so how could the demon eye maintain itself? Should I try using it? Seal asked carefully. No, Eugene responded immediately. Although using the demon eye's power could potentially reveal other unknown facts, now wasn't the time to test it as everyone was not in the best condition. Seal, you're exhausted. It would be better to check your status later after everyone has had ample rest, Christina advised with a stiff expression. After examining it closely, it didn't seem like Seal's demon eye used dark power as its driving force. She had channeled some divine power into her with caution, but there had been no adverse reaction whatsoever. Could it be using mana instead? Or perhaps it was using the primal energy inherent in humans as its power source. If it was the latter, the demon eye could be extremely dangerous. After all, the primal energy of humans was synonymous with their life force, in short, with their lifespan. Yes, Seal agreed, attempting to compose her expression. She hadn't fully calmed down yet. Seal tried her best to be optimistic. She had narrowly avoided living her entire life as a one-eyed individual. Wasn't that something to be thankful for? But despite her efforts to see things positively, her mood did not improve significantly. I'm fine. Nonetheless, Seal reassured everyone with a smile. She looked at Sienna and Christina, who were fidgeting with her hands, and continued, "Is it all over?" She had witnessed the demise of the Demon King. The sky was no longer dark and the sea was not red anymore. The air was no longer filled with the nauseating scent of rotting flesh and blood, nor with the agonizing noise of buzzing insects. Not yet. Contrary to Seal's expectations, that was how Eugene replied. The Demon King was dead and not a single subordinate of hers remained. Morgiabella had left, and there was no trace of the Demon King of incarceration. Yet it wasn't entirely over. At least for Eugene, it still wasn't over, as he had something left to do. Get going. It was Sienna who broke the silence. You have something to see down there, don't you? When the sea had been split open by the holy sword, Sienna had seen what lay in the unimaginable depths below. Although she couldn't fully grasp what it was, part of her wanted to ask Eugene for an explanation about it right away. Instead of saying, "Get going," what she really wanted to say was, "Let's go together." But she couldn't. Eugene's expression was more unfamiliar to her than ever before. There is indeed something I need to check. Eugene also didn't mince his words and let out a short sigh. His mind was a tumultuous storm of thoughts, tangled and twisted. He tried to sort out the swirling emotions, but it was futile. The more he pondered, the more knotted they seemed to become. It reminded him of the fleeting moments just after waking from a dream, when details could still be vividly recalled. But as time passed and other thoughts intruded upon the waking mind, the dream would fade, almost forgotten from one's thoughts. It felt as though even now those thoughts were disappearing from his mind. He feared that doing nothing would lead to his worries melting into his unconscious, hiding away forever. And this wasn't what Eugene wanted. "I'll be back soon." Once more Eugene sighed heavily before starting to move. But his feet were rooted to the ground. He was held back by concerns for Seal, Sienna, Christina, and Anise. Maybe they should come with him? No, Eugene decided firmly. He quietly raised the cloak of darkness. Sensing his intent, Mare and Rhaenyra emerged from the folds of the garment. Their faces wore complex expressions of question and concern, unable to fully comprehend Eugene's thoughts. Eugene had only thought. He didn't want to show them, not the turmoil in his mind nor what he would find in the depths below. The first to witness it, to feel it, to judge it, it had to be him and him alone. It has to be me. Coming to this decision, Eugene turned away with determination. He had pushed himself to the limit in today's battle. Without miracles and blessings, he wondered how many times he would have died. Utilizing ignition had left his body in a terrible state. Thankfully, his current body, that of Eugene Lionheart, was naturally sturdy. If it had been his previous life's weaker form, he would certainly have been bedridden by now, being left unable to walk. Feeling grateful for his robust physique, Eugene staggered outside the barrier. He was certain that many people here had pending questions and the urge to speak to him. However, nobody approached Eugene. "Do you need help?" Carmen asked instead of approaching him. With a bitter smile, Eugene shook his head. "Please stay with Seal." He had no intention of leaning on anyone. Passing Carmen, he headed towards the railing. The sea was still parted, a sight that had other ships' crews pointing and murmuring among themselves. Leaning unsteadily on the railing, Eugene turned and announced, "I'm saying this just in case, but do not follow me down there." He didn't wait for a response. Despite warning others not to go, he didn't hesitate to leap into the sea himself. Whoosh! A gust of wind caught him, breaking his fall. It was Tempest. Holding WE inside his cloak, Eugene chuckled. "Aren't you upset?" "What do you mean?" Tempest asked. "I didn't use WMYD to kill the Demon King," Eugene explained. "It's not like you didn't need my help at all though," Tempest responded with a hearty laugh. "It wasn't only Sienna's magic that summoned the wind to propel the fleet. Tempest also played a part in this, as the wind had also responded to Tempest's will. Moreover, every time Eugene wavered during the battle in the sky, it was Tempest who silently stabilized him." "I do not feel disappointed, Hamel," Tempest stated. Eugene soared over the sea, his body supported and pushed forth by the wind. Tempest continued, "My resentment lies with the Demon King of Incarceration, not with Fury. It was with the Northern Expedition that could not be fulfilled. I still remember the scenery at the pinnacle of Babel. How the wind felt there and how powerless I was." Eugene decided to stay quiet and just listen to Tempest. "When you eventually ascend to Babel, you might not need the help from WNYD or me. Isn't it already like that, Hamel? You have formidable weapons that cannot be compared to WNYD. Even the storms that I, a spirit king of the spirit world, can conjure in this world would not be more violent than the ones you can create yourself." Tempest sounded rueful. "Well, when fighting against the Demon King of Incarceration, I will still swing WMYD around a few times," said Eugene. "Haha, there's no need. Someday, when you reach Babel, when you confront the Demon King of Incarceration, I will aid you in my own way just like this time. That is enough for me. I am satisfied with that," Tempest said with a chuckle. Eugene looked down below. The sea gaped open, the waters neither pouring nor merging with each other. Along with the wind, Eugene descended to the very bottom of the chasm, to the abyss. "What's down there?" Tempest asked curiously. "I don't know," Eugene replied, not sounding convincing. "You should know. Yet I can't read your emotions. Don't you want to show it?" Tempest probed him. "It's a complex feeling," Eugene muttered with a bitter smile. "I don't want to accept it rather than not wanting to show it. Frankly, I don't even want to see it." "Why?" Tempest asked, perplexed. "Because I'm afraid," Eugene admitted candidly. They finally reached the bottom of the abyss. Eugene landed on the ground. Though he anticipated the seabed to be damp, it wasn't so at all. Contrary to his expectations, it seemed unbreakably hard. "You're afraid?" The voice of Tempest became hardly audible. It was likely due to the powers of incarceration in play. Eugene grumbled while walking on the hard ground. "I'm afraid of whether I can handle it." Eugene suddenly sank down. Just a reminder for all our readers in case you feel confused here. It has been mentioned in the previous chapters regarding Noir's obsession with Hamel that she has tried killing herself many times by casting an illusion on herself. Though she has died several times from this, it isn't permanent. Hence her fixation on Hamel, as he might be the only person capable of granting her long-cherished desire of death.